Ford makes a boatload of money. Congress asked Fisker where all the money went. And Buick just came out with a Chinese concept car.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone. Your journey, our passion.
This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy, episode 193 for April 26, 2013. The rise and fall of Henrik Fisker. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time or 2200 GMT. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or by following the links on our website. Mr. De Lorenzo.
John McElroy.
We got another show to do here today, man.
Yeah, what's up?
What's up? Well, we got Gary Vasilash with us.
John, how are you?
I'm doing well, Gary. Yeah. And if the bum shows up, we'll have David Welch back on the show after a hiatus of, I don't know, a couple of years or something now, it seems.
DW.
It's going to the big city.
So he's on his way, they tell us. So I'm sure he'll be here soon enough. But
How about that Buick Riviera concept?
If you bore in on the details of it, there's some really cool details. But when you pan back and look at the whole thing, there's just something that's not right by it, I think.
Yeah.
And here he is.
And here's David Welch. All right.
Dude.
Good seeing you.
Dave. Here, we'll put it right in the middle there.
So how you doing?
Doing pretty well.
You just
flew in from the coast.
the East Coast.
Yeah.
How's things out there for you?
Going pretty well. Good gig. Writing about some auto stuff lately, a little bit.
Uh-huh.
I cover a lot of different things, but I cover mergers and acquisitions. So any deal, we try to break them. We try to, analyze them, whatever. I have industrial and auto in my portfolio, so I was on the Johnson Controls sale. Been covering that, covering some of the Fisker.
So who's going to buy it? Delphi and
Continental.
Conti, right, are in on it?
There are several people looking at it. Delphi, they appear to have the strongest interest, but you never know. I mean, these deals go on for months, and companies will kind of kick the tires and walk away. That's what Valeo did. Companies will kind of pretend to walk away and kind of hang around to see if somebody else will strike out and try to come in, and get a cheaper deal. So there's a lot of posturing and stuff. It's kind of interesting to watch at times. Covered some of the Fisker stuff. That whole.
We're going to get into that in a minute. We were just talking about this Buick concept car. I don't know if you saw that was shown at the Shanghai show.
I have not seen it, no.
Was that designed in China? Was that done at their Chinese studio?
This is their third concept car, I think.
Yeah, and if you go to the Autoextremist site, I put the...
That's it right there up.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I have seen this,
I put the original Riviera underneath.
Now, I like that
right?
shot. I think that's kind of cool. That front end overhead looking down on the grill and all that.
To me, it's another concept that they were spot on at the front, and then they sort of lost their focus by the time they got to the back.
But you don't like that fastback look. We've ripped up the Cross Tour and the
I don't mind that,
5GT.
but it just seems to fall apart in the back. I don't know what, not necessarily because of the roof line, but because of the...
See, but I look at the front of it and I say, why is that Buick? Why isn't that anything else?
Well, to me, it's very Lexus LFLC influence.
Yeah, it is.
Especially when you look down at the lower
sort of
quarters is exactly. The only thing is the rounded nose and then sort of that grill. But if that waterfall grill could have been a Lincoln concept car of 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean, right. The fastback rear end from the side behind the door there, just, I don't know, there's something that just doesn't do it for me on the proportions just seem wrong looking at it from especially this rear three-quarter angle.
Well, but think about this being a concept car, and there's a lot of stuff in that sheet metal that they would just never do in a production car, even a low-run, expensive car.
That's why it wouldn't be sheet metal. It would probably be
whatever,
a composite material.
But I was saying, if you bore in on the fine details of the car, there's some cool stuff going on there. But like I said, if you pan back and look at the overall, there's something about the proportions that don't work for my eye.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not knocked out by it. I will go on record as saying the Corvette convertible of the C7 looks good. Looks better than the coupe. The coupe Nissan GTR roofline just drives me crazy. So I don't know. It's not exactly a hit, this Riviera concept. It's okay, just okay.
It's an interesting quote. Apparently, it's based on a Chinese saying, "The greatest good is like water." There you go.
Well, that changes everything, man.
It does.
It's a home run.
Oh, I get it.
The greatest good is like water. What's that mean?
I mean, if the
Inscrutable.
greatest good was like tequila, they might have something there, but
That's right. So yeah, Fisker was another thing that was in the news. It was not another thing. He's another guy that's in the news this week.
Being grilled by the House
Well, this deal.
Oversight Committee.
Who are they trying to sign with in China?
Well, they talked to a couple, Wanxiang, which also had bid on A123, or they bought part of they bought A123 out of bankruptcy, was one, but they bowed out early. Dongfeng was the one who was in there right up till the end. There were a couple other Chinese car companies who had kicked the tires, but the problem with doing deals with the Chinese, and I've talked to bankers who do auto deals almost exclusively, and they've dealt with the Chinese. These guys look at almost everything that goes up for sale, and parts, particularly if there's any kind of technology. That's what they want, is the technology.
There ain't no technology at Fisker, right?
We can get into that. They have a lot of patents, but that's a separate discussion about kind of what happened with the whole deal process. So the Chinese companies look at everything, and the only real deals we've seen done, the Hummer deal fell apart. Volvo was obviously done. Nextier was done, but it isn't going well. So you have a lot of tire kicking, and they just don't seem to buy. And if they're looking at Fisker, one of the stories I did is while they were in the sale process, they hired this company called Huron Consulting out of Chicago, which is basically a turnaround firm. Their job was to help conserve cash, cut costs, kind of manage the day-to-day. Well, if a company hires someone to help conserve cash while they're trying to sell it, what does that tell the buyer, or potential bidders, that these things could end up just being a fire sale or a bankruptcy sale, and they could get a cheap distressed asset. So I think the Chinese are savvy enough to do that. Why would I pay a good price for this now? I can wait 3 or 4 months and just buy whatever patents, a brand, a design, whatever it is that they wanted out of bankruptcy or just some sort of shareholder liquidation sale.
Isn't that what happened to A123 essentially, though? I mean, didn't the price go way, way down after the initial bidding went on, and so they just stand
that was an actual bankruptcy sale.
Yeah, but remember, Wanxiang, is that how you pronounce it, wanted to come in and buy it, and it was some guys in Congress who went, whoa, 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 this was all developed on American taxpayer money, we're not going to sell it to the Chinese. Right. And then it went into bankruptcy, and they got it for half the price.
Look, my guess is that when you look at these deals, particularly something like Fisker that borrowed close to $200 million from the government, that any Chinese buyer is going to come in and they're going to have to raise the cash, in addition to whatever they pay for the company, they're going to have to pay cash to immediately pay off the U.S. government. I don't think the Energy Department's going to want, Wanxiang or Dongfeng or somebody like that on the books, because the political outcry from that would be too much. Look, going all the way back on this deal, when they funded Tesla, when they funded Fisker, Nissan, Ford, some other projects, I did a piece in the Old Businessweek that basically looked at why Fisker. Because with Tesla, you can at least, I actually admire Tesla in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because that battery pack, okay, they're using this cylindrical
It's
cells.
unique technology. Nobody else has
So
it.
at least the battery pack design is unique. I mean, sure, the laptops all use those cells, but that's sort of the genius of it. And I'll tell you, everyone at Nissan, engineers at GM, engineers at Toyota, experts in the field who we know and have had it on this show told me that Tesla's design won't work because those 6,821 cells, there are that many connectors, and a bunch of them will break, and the cylinders packed together, they won't dissipate heat enough. This thing's going to fail. They're going to have immense warranty problems. That has not happened.
Right.
They all said you have to use the prismatic cells because there are fewer of them, therefore fewer connectors. They dissipate heat because it's a big flat surface. Yeah, that works fine too. But the Tesla's technology has not failed the way it was supposed to. And I'll tell you what I'm really impressed with those guys is, okay, it was Automobile's Car of the Year. So I sent Jean Jennings an email saying, come on, is this really that good? And she said, yeah, we were blown away by it. It's smooth, it's tight, it's cool inside, it's a real car. Fisker screwed up even that stuff, the basic car making stuff. But you look at what Fisker does, it was A123's battery. They were basically integrating stuff that was off the shelf from others. They do have a lot of patents on basically similar to the Volt, the whole sort of EREV thing. And I think there might be kind of argument between GM and Fisker over who.
Oh, really? Oh, I hadn't heard
not
this.
Not legal, but I've heard there's more like a debate in the technical community over who came up with what first in terms of how all that power is transferred and stuff like that. My guess is it would be GM because I think they were around doing Volt stuff first, but who knows. But they do have some patents, okay? So there is some real technology there. And if you're a Chinese car company, a chassis, a suspension, a whole platform for a high-end sports car like that is something that they don't really do. So there's some valuable assets there, and those cars are gorgeous. And Henrik Fisker designed like 4 of them. If you go to their webpage, they had the Karma, and then they had the Nina, and then they had 2 others.
The Atlantic was one.
That's right, the Atlantic, and they're really good-looking cars.
Right. Yeah, well,
see, the thing it really puzzles me is that we get all upset about $200 million. Now, obviously, I don't have $200 million. I'm not anywhere near $200 million. But, when you look at, the government's, I'm trying. I'm at 199, and I just can't get over that hump.
come on with me. We'll go walk down the highway here and collect bottles.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at what we spend money for, and I mean, $200 million is nothing. I looked at the number for the Iraq War, 10 years, $1.7 trillion.
Yeah, but to John's point, he's saying the government is funding this, and what was the unique technology if they were an integrator? And that was the point I made in Businessweek several years ago, is that there's not a battery pack design or a battery chemistry. GM, Ford, the foreign car companies, even Chrysler to a degree, they were trying already to put batteries and engines together in hybrids, advanced hybrids, weak hybrids, strong hybrids. They're already working on many
right,
variations.
But if you can kickstart that, then that's benefit. Well, I think you did, because if we didn't, then there'd be more of these things out there right now. And if you look at it, where's the technology all gone to?
Where?
So we have General Motors, right, and we have Ford doing some stuff. But in terms of the other companies, I mean, it's A123. Do we own them anymore? We funded them, but we don't own them.
Doing lithium-ion batteries.
No. I'm not saying they are, but I'm saying that it's sort of important for the nation to have the capability and the wherewithal to do things like this.
Yeah, my argument is we didn't need Fisker to do that.
Yeah, look, as I've said all along, it's great for the government to put money into research, and especially research that's way out there that could have a massive payoff. But because it's way out there, private industry is not going to do. Government should step in and do that. But do not give money to companies to run their operations. That's where I draw the line. If somebody says, hey, I got a way to start a company, but I need government money, no, get out of here. If you come in and say, hey, I think I've got a crazy idea, but if it pays off, it's gigantic, I need to do research, boom, here you go. That's where I think the whole thing, really unraveled over the last 5-6 years, is we started giving money to these companies, not for research, but to run their operations. And we gave it to a bunch of people that, in many cases, had never started a company before, never run a company, never proved that they could really get the job done. And that's what private equity's for, as far as I'm concerned.
Venture capital, too.
Venture capital, right.
Well, in the case of Henrik Fisker, I think his designs are great.
Sure.
And I look at this thing, and look, it's always easier to tear it apart.
Quoting Peter's line, Henrik has got to stop thinking that he's a big mogul and go back to being a car designer.
Yep. He should open up a shop.
And I quote you by name on that, too.
He should open up a U.S. version of like Pininfarina, like his own design studio.
He tried. He was reskinning Mercedes-Benz SLs. Remember that?
And he did. That's right. He did have like Fisker coach build
for like 5 minutes.
And like 6 Series BMWs too.
And then someone said, "Hey, Henrik, we should do our own car company."
Right.
That's right. He had Fisker coach build, I believe
Right,
it
which
was
then
called.
segued into the
Oh yeah,
car
and
company.
they sold like 3 of them.
And nothing against him, but you see this in business all the time, particularly small business, and that's kind of what this was, is guys or women who are very good at being an engineer, being a designer, being a doctor, whatever it is, and then they hang out a shingle and start their own gig. Running a business that does all of that stuff is a lot different than being in the shop and actually doing it. You've got to be a marketer, you've got to be an accountant.
Going back to your
you've gotta be
point,
a
that's
human
why
being.
Tesla really is impressive, because they recognized it's not just about building a car, it's about doing the manufacturing. What do? They hire a guy from Toyota. They recognize, hey, it's all about logistics. They hire a professional logistics person, purchasing, so on down the line. I mean, he put together, an A to Z company, didn't just put out a pretty car.
Well, the thing that amazes me about Tesla, too, is there's been a lot of drama along the way. Elon has gone through 3 or 4 CEOs before he settled on himself. I interviewed him one time, and I asked him point blank, and I think we quoted him on this in the magazine at the time. I said, "People tell me you're tough to work for because you're a micromanager." And he said, "That's not true. I'm a nano manager." And he's proud of that. And he went through Mike Donahoe and some of the guys on the product side. Bunch of top executives, top marketing guys. There's a revolving door in the C-suite. He's a nano manager. He doesn't really know cars. So you can just go down this list and it sort of checks the box on everything that should absolutely fail, and they've actually made it so far.
He has a spacecraft company, so he has lots of
Well, he's a
smart
true
engineers.
entrepreneur. I was talking with some people earlier this week, and all about this very same thing. And my conclusion was, Henrik Fisker decided that he was going to be an entrepreneur. Elon just is. I mean, this is what he's on 3 startups right now, right? Didn't he do PayPal, then Tesla, now SpaceX as well? And I'm sure if he has some other dream, he'll go off and chase that too.
Yeah, one thing he's very good at is he's obviously good at raising money, and that's a talent. He's good at selling this thing, and he's also a physicist by training. So in terms of technology, he's not a dumb guy. Look, I don't know that Tesla is going to make it long term. They've got the Model S out the door. It was profitable for a quarter. Now,
have you seen the numbers? Everyone's talked about, oh yeah, Fisker's or Tesla's profitable in the first quarter, and Tesla says, oh, we're profitable in the first quarter. And I go to the website to look at what are the real numbers. They ain't there. There's nothing posted.
on their website?
On their website.
Just pull up our data.
Yeah, you guys probably have better data on them than they have on themselves, or at least publishing.
They should have it just in a press release.
You'd think. I couldn't find it.
The impressive thing about it, and we'll see if it lasts, but the impressive thing about it is that one of the reasons they were profitable is they sold more of the high-end versions of the car than they thought. And they
discontinued the lower version. Yeah.
Right.
That's a good sign. Now, look, Peter's pointed this out. Once the early adopters and the true believers are done, are you
Then
still
what?
selling this thing
Then what?
to people who
But
shop?
to your point, the other thing that's what's turned my opinion around about Tesla is they're licensing their technology to Daimler and Toyota. And I got to
We're
believe...
both shareholders in the company, by the way.
Correct, exactly.
Surprising.
But again, that shows they got technology that even Daimler and Toyota want to get their hands on. I think, your point.
Let's not forget Ballard also licensed technology to those.
Ballard fuel cells. Yep, and that's gone nowhere. Right. Yeah. Good point, Gary. Good point. But to your point, because
Has Ballard ever made money?
I don't even know if they exist anymore. Do they?
That's a good question. I'll bet they do, but I don't know.
Ford was big there, and
somebody in the chat room, look this up real fast. Is Ballard still around?
It was the hottest thing going in what was it, in British Columbia?
Correct.
Well, with Tesla, though, look, companies, particularly car companies, can shift money around quarter to quarter. And I'm not saying they're doing anything illegal or unethical, but big costs can be accounted for later on. just by deciding to put off a marketing or some engineering work another month or another couple of weeks, throw it over that deadline. I'm not saying they're playing that game, but sometimes it's just the cadence of how you're doing projects and starting and launching things. So you just have to see quarters of.
Well, I want to see what the profit is, because as we've talked about on the show a lot is, okay, they got the S out, Motor Trend Car of the Year, automobile, all this other stuff, all the accolades. I've driven the car. It's a really good car. Now, Mr. Musk, you got to come up with hundreds of millions of dollars more to come out with the next model lines that you've got. And I know they've got the sort of crossover coming, and it's pretty much done. But nonetheless, they are going to need more models to get the volume that they want, and that's going to take a lot more money.
See, but maybe the definition for them of what a car company is different than the definition that we have in this town, that we think things differently than they do. And so maybe the goal isn't to have vast showrooms full of shiny new product.
I don't think it is.
And so maybe what it is all about to him is to say, okay, you satisfy this limited demand, and once that's satisfied, then you go on to
who in the world makes it at that level?
But again,
the only niche car.
Yeah. The only
your
example.
Morgans and those guys out there.
Yeah,
I generally love their cars.
Right, but I think Porsche is a better example. Not the present day 2013 Porsche.
Big.
Now it is. But if you go back a decade and a half ago, their volume wasn't that great. It was under 100,000 a year. They almost died. Yeah. Till Wiedekind got in there and started running it properly.
Yeah, with the Toyota production system.
Yeah, absolutely. They hired a bunch of old Toyota guys, ex-Toyota guys.
One of the things that also saved them is, financially anyways, is they got into the SUV business.
Right.
They broadened their appeal. And
but all I'm saying is that, if you go back 15 years ago, Porsche was, or even not that long ago, Porsche was doing about 100,000 cars a year, and it was making decent money. Now Fisker's goal is to get to 20,000, or Tesla's goal is to get to 20,000 a year.
That would be Fisker's goal, too.
Yes, it would. In fact, that was DeLorean's goal, too, by the way, back in '81. But what I'm getting at is, Tesla could model itself after Porsche. But I asked Elon Musk this very question: what are you going to do with this company? And finally, through a few more questions got out of him, he will sell the company.
Yeah, so he flips it to Toyota. Toyota's got a nice niche division.
He's a shareholder with something like 23% of the stock.
Life is good.
Mm-hmm. So he could.
He said his only goal, he'll only sell it to a company that is going to perpetuate. He said, I'm only in this to sell electric cars. That's all I'm in it for. He's not. He claims he's not even in it to make a bunch of money. Just in it to make electric cars.
I'm always wary when.
Well, I know it. I know, but I'm just telling you what he said. But he did openly say he'd be willing to sell to somebody.
This is a guy who wants to colonize Mars. That takes a lot of money. So he may not need another house in Palo Alto, but he's got grand ambitions, and that takes money. Not that he would necessarily get hugely rich selling Tesla, but I think he'd like to make good money on it, obviously. It'll be interesting to see. Maybe he will sell it to another car company.
Maybe he'll just sell tickets on SpaceX rockets. We'll just take rides, and he'll make a lot of money, and we'll all go to Mars.
Drive Teslas on Mars.
In 2040.
So what'd you all guys make of Ford and some of the other earnings that came out this week? Ford did pretty good.
Yeah, Ford's doing great guns in North America. South America, not so good.
No, losing money there. Europe losing money there.
Ford kind of bolstered by
Asia
China.
Pacific, not making much money at all.
I thought they did it right in China. Or they're really starting
China,
to
their sales are skyrocketing.
Yeah, they're
very
just
impressive.
starting to sort of leave the station there. It's going to be.
They started way late, but I want to say the Focus was one of the best-selling cars in China in the first quarter. I mean, they've gone from zero, they're rocketing up. I mean, they're still half the size of the big players like Volkswagen and
General Motors
and GM. But and it's very interesting because, of course, sitting here in Detroit, I'm not in China, but based on the people I've talked to, Ford's done a brilliant job of handling customers at the dealership level. People love going to their dealerships. So maybe they're doing something different than others are, but it's been Real impressive because, as you all know, they got to China way late. And I thought, wow, the train left the station. You guys, you missed the boat here. And, I think they're at about 2.5% market share. They want to shoot for 6 in the short term and then grow it from there.
Though presumably there's like endless demand in China for cars. I mean, will it ever stop?
Yeah, when everybody dies from the pollution.
Well, there is that.
But at various points, some of the big cities have limited new registrations because of congestion and parking issues. So, yeah, I mean, you can hit critical mass on where you can put all the cars. You just, you get to the point where you can't drive any further, so you just get out and leave it where it is, and everyone just
buy a new one.
Well, China's selling, what, I want to say 17, 18 million cars this year. Well, we say cars. Actually, they're selling about the same number of cars as in the United States. It's when you start counting all the commercial trucks and buses and vans that, it's that segment of the market is way bigger than it is here, or in Europe for that matter. But if you look at how we classify light vehicles, the U.S. and the Chinese market right now are about even Steven in units. In dollars, it's still way bigger here, because they sell a lot of these little $5,000 Wuling vans, minivans. But nonetheless, if you look at the issues that they have right now at, let's call it 17, 18 million vehicles, and everyone predicting it's going to go to 30 million before the decade's out. I mean, what the hell are they going to do for oil imports and controlling their congestion and pollution at the levels they got right now, much less going to 30 million?
The bigger question is, what are we going to do for oil imports since...
Oh, we're going to go to natural gas and propane, man.
Well, there you go. Because they're going to have all the petroleum over there since they have all the dollars.
Right, let them deal with the Middle East.
And, we are going to be doing quite a bit with natural gas, though.
American what?
I think we are going to do quite a bit with natural gas.
Commercial trucks. Especially.
Why not cars?
Infrastructure's not there yet.
No, but they're talking longer term. Why not?
Why not? Absolutely.
Look,
where we all just drive Teslas.
Look at the history of American economic problems and how we got out of them. There were a couple of things that got us out of the Depression. One was basically taking the country off the gold standard, lowering prices and increasing exports. But then there was the war. And then there was, after the war, there was a housing boom. Then there was an auto boom. Then we had all kinds of problems in the 70s. You had basically the growth of equities in the 80s, kind of financial engineering. In the 90s, you had tech. Then we had the very bogus housing boom of the last 10 years. So what's going to tow us out of the next one? Is there something in tech that we all see? iPhones are kind of maxing out. Natural gas.
Natural gas.
In addition to the fuel problems, it's the answer to, I think, the fact that we're crawling still out of this economic downturn that we had over the past few years. Still at 7+% unemployment.
Right, and that's not counting the people who quit looking for jobs. So it's really higher than that.
Yeah, that's not great. It's better than it was, but it's not great. And a lot of people are underemployed. Real wages are down. People can't buy as much. It's not a great time to be an American in terms of buying power and economic security. So natural gas is the only thing I can see that would tow us out of it.
Yeah.
It's interesting if you think about, the situation like Ford in Europe versus Ford in China. And you think about all the car companies, like we looked at the Riviera earlier, that had concept vehicles at the Shanghai show. I mean, it just seemed like one car company after another was showing new product there in a way that I think is perhaps unprecedented. And so what does that say about we sit over here and we're doing okay. I mean, all things considered. And you got to believe that whether you're sitting in Cologne or Rüsselsheim or Stuttgart or wherever, and you're just like going, geez, oh man, the bricks are falling out of the walls here. I mean, it's like, what the hell's going on? How are we gonna shore this up? And meanwhile, they're in China. I mean, everyone is got this big momentum going. And so I wonder, what are the consequences on the global auto industry? I mean, does it begin to shrink, measurably in Europe as it grows even more proportionately in China, and we just sort of stay the same?
And European auto sales just hit lowest point since 1995. So it's very bad in Europe, sure. And what I do is we watch deal flow and where's the money coming from, where's it going to. To your point about the U.S. economy, we have it pretty good over here. It's actually, relatively speaking, true, because Asian and European companies are looking to buy here, because that's where there's some growth. It's not great growth, but it's better than contraction in Europe, in most European countries, and even in China. China has slowed down. So the U.S. is pretty attractive right now.
Yeah, I think it will remain so. I think we're actually entering an era, maybe a century, of plentiful, cheap, and relatively clean fuel, ergo natural gas, and propane. I keep adding propane.
What about all of this? What about this? Isn't oil that's trapped in the ice that the Japanese are tapping into?
Yeah, there's that too. Right. So, yeah, I think we'll get through this this oil-dominated global economy and transfer into this other stuff over the course of the century. But the natural gas stuff is right here, right now. And I just wish we'd get our act together in this country and build an energy policy around that says, OPEC, it's a cartel. Cartels are illegal. Why are we dealing with this illegal activity? Let's just chop them off.
Well, it's one of the things that's just maddening about how our government works or doesn't work, is that one of the biggest problems we've had for the last 20 years is energy. And there's never been an attempt to come up with a policy. It's always nipping on the edges, either with some kind of regulation, like CAFE or clean air rules or something like that. Now they're looking at fracking and what that means in the environment, which they should do. But let's not say no fracking or no fracking in these certain areas. Let's just figure out.
I don't know if you saw this recently, but the oil companies and the environmentalists, including Environmental Defense Fund, just came to some agreement on how to do fracking, rules and regulations thereof. But I shouldn't say regulations. There is no regulation on it. It's the article I read on it said it's kind of like the Underwriter Laboratories thing. Everybody agrees in making electronic stuff to build it to UL standards. And so the oil companies, which include ExxonMobil and Environmental Defense, getting together and say, yeah, here's how we're going to frack. And, the casements have to be, to this level of concrete standard and no flaring off and, make sure there's no leaks along the way. And very interesting. And it's gotten almost no coverage whatsoever.
You drive by, there'll be a giant sticker on the side, or the UL label.
Right. But the point I'm making is because the government hasn't moved on any of this fracking stuff much at all, the oil industry and and what the environmentalists are saying is, look, we know this stuff's going to happen. Let's try to make sure that the oil companies do it right. And the other thing that's happening is the big oil companies are going in and buying out all these wildcatters who didn't care what the hell they just dumped wherever. And if it caused problems, they're going to make their money and they'd be out of there.
I think the environmentalists have an interest in seeing it happen because natural gas burns clean.
Cleaner.
Well, cleaner, that's true.
You got to add the
That's true. No, you're right. It's not hydrogen.
It's not hydrogen. It's about 30% less carbon content than gasoline. But,
I thought it was a lot cleaner than gasoline.
It depends. No, you're probably comparing. It's about 50% cleaner than coal. It's about 30% cleaner than gasoline. In terms of, I don't know if I'm quoting carbon content or greenhouse gas content, because things like methane, which are in both natural gas and propane, are like 7x worse greenhouse gas effect than carbon dioxide.
So every time I fire up my grill, I'm burning a hole in the ozone.
It's a bigger carbon molecule is what the thing
is that it?
Comes to, yeah.
Okay.
So Peter, a week or two ago, you said that you thought Chrysler was going to go away and it was going to become Fiat. Did you see that there was a report about trading on New York Exchange?
Yeah, Sergio's getting impatient. He's going to outside investors because they're sitting on some cash, but if he reduces that cash, then their credit rating goes to not very good. So now he's talking to banks and investors to give them the cash so they can buy the rest of Chrysler outright and cut the UAW out of it.
He's got an issue with that, though. That's tied up in court.
Right.
That deal, as it was written, on how they were going to evaluate the shares that the UAW Viva Trust holds in Chrysler was, it just leaves it wide open, and that's what this big fight is over, is how much Sergio should have to pay for it. I think he'll end up buying it, but...
I think this is negotiating. He threw out a way low ball figure, and they went, no, and they threw out a way high ball figure.
Low ball figure was based on, it was based on some real calculations in terms, and it was sort of a fair view. So too, according to how vague the contract was written, is what the Viva came up with, and there's a big disparity, obviously, or they wouldn't be in court, but it was just not done. It was just not done well at all. I've never seen anything like it, where they set up these parameters to put a value on something, and there's this huge argument over what it's actually worth. And it's shares in a company, even though they're not public shares, there's some value on it.
Well, can't the Viva do its own IPO with those shares?
Yes, they
can. Then the market will determine what those shares are worth. And I wonder, would it be closer to what they want or what Sergio wants?
I've heard about that myself. It's something I need to look into. There's a careful what you wish, because GM and Ford stocks aren't exactly
setting the world on fire.
No, and they're in terms of an investment, they're more profitable companies. They're much larger. They have better scale. Everyone knows they're going to be around a long time, and there's still a few people around who think that Chrysler and Fiat won't make it. I don't agree with them, but there's just no question that GM and Ford are stronger companies, more likely to attract investors than Fiat's a troubled player in Europe. And
I wonder if it's back to the point of Europe collapsing and strength here. So why wouldn't he?
He wants to be on the New York Stock Exchange.
Well, look, the vehicles that Chrysler sells just generate a lot more cash than what Fiat has.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about SUVs. I happen to like the new Jeeps. You have a pickup truck business. You have a big sedan that does pretty well. Chrysler small cars aren't so hot, but that's not where they make the money.
Yeah, no, look.
Fiat does that, and they don't make that much money doing it.
Well,
no one does in Europe.
Well,
Volkswagen's the only company that gets good pricing over there.
Right. Fiat's mainly A and B class cars. It's not even C. It's mainly A and B, and that's paper-thin margins in those cars. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Chrysler easily makes more money than Fiat does.
One of the stories we reported on is Sergio kind of wanted to get his nose in the tent on the Pujo Opel alliance, and the philosophy there is you've got too many car companies in Europe selling the same kind of thing, merge them up and split costs and all that sort of thing. It's tough to see this stuff ever working because it just rarely works, but on paper it's the right idea. There are too many companies beating each other up for lousy pricing in the European market.
Well, what do you guys all make of GM doing this deal with PSA, Pujo? Does it? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. It just doesn't.
Doesn't make any sense to me either.
I understand the concept. Okay, we both got to do these cars. We both got to do these engines. Why don't we split the cost? It never worked when GM was tied up with Toyota or Subaru or Suzuki or Isuzu.
Well, but it could work. Look at Daimler and Nissan. The engine deal, they're going to be building those engines in record. So you have this development deal.
I agree, Gary, but here's the difference. To your point, that's a project. Hey, let's do a project together. We'll split the cost. As opposed to, I'm going to take a $400 million equity position in your company. That's what I don't get at all. I just don't get it. And the other thing, too, is when you start to do projects, that's one thing. When you start to say, now we're going to, take equity positions, and now there's got to be meetings and, reviews and approvals and authorizations, and all of a sudden your project, it doesn't take 3 years to get a car to market, it takes 5 years to get it to market.
A lot of those projects were behind schedule, too. Look, Fiat, or rather Renault and Nissan, have done a better job at it than anybody, and they've been together for almost 15 years now.
Right.
we have a lot of joint engines in cars, but I'd say it's still not as joint at the hip.
No, and I don't think it should be. I think that Carlos Ghosn has handled that alliance brilliantly.
Yeah, I think he's
kept
pretty good
two
job.
completely, totally separate companies. They've kept their own culture. By and large, they've kept their own people with some cross-pollination.
For them to get all of these synergies that everybody talks about, and I think it's going to be even more difficult for PSA and GM to do it because they don't have as big an equity tie-up. They don't have one CEO running the whole thing. The one that actually could work, honestly, is the Fiat Chrysler deal, because
there's no overlap. That's why.
Yeah,
there's just about zero overlap.
And where there is in passenger cars, none of Chrysler's passenger cars or the platforms underneath them are considered terrific. The platforms are long in tooth. So if the thing's totally merged and you want to use a Fiat platform for these Chrysler cars, say, you don't sit around and say, well, we have this brand new 200 and we just have to wait another 4 years to be able to, because it's so good we can't touch it. It's not that sort of thing. You can just say, okay, go ahead, redesign it. Give us a new platform, put it on the Fiat. You can just plop it right in there. Whereas if you look at Opel and Pujo, or just take any two car companies and you try to go through their product plans and you want to merge up, say, the mid-sized cars. Well, if someone just came out with a new one last year, you got to wait 4 years before you can even talk about putting them all on one platform. It's matching up that cadence of everybody's product plan is one of the toughest things to do.
Yeah.
And with minimal overlap and with some old cars in Chrysler's line and no big vehicles in Fiat's line, it's really easy to do. And you have one guy who calls the shots. You have to execute it, but the plan would work.
Right. Well, that's why it's, so far, Fiat Chrysler resembles Nissan Renault more than any other kind of merger out there, I think.
Yeah, but isn't it arguably there's Nissan and it's this company and it's sort of big, and there's Renault and it's this company that's big, and so they're just sort of, as he said, sort of joined at the hip together. And what's going on with Fiat and Chrysler is there's this company called Fiat and then there's this company called Chrysler, and it's going like this.
I'm not sure that's the direction,
though. In business, money always speaks loudest. And where revenue and profits come from get far more attention than where they don't come from. And in the Fiat Chrysler deal, all the money and the profits is coming out of Chrysler, not out of Fiat. Mm-hmm. And I
wouldn't this argue that Chrysler then eclipses Fiat?
Eclipses is not so much the right word, is that I think over time now, at the board level, they're going to say, do we put $1 billion into a new Punto or $1 billion into a new Ram? I say we go with the Ram because we're going to make a ton more money on it. And I think that's where you're going to see the changes happen. That it's not so much that Chrysler will take over Fiat, it's just that the board's going to say, well, why don't we invest where we're going to really make a return?
Well, yeah,
so then what happens to the Punto in the European market when it's no longer competitive because the money went to the Ram?
Well, it's not like they won't stop investing in Puntos and the like. It's just that the profitable stuff is going to get the priority. Mm-hmm. It's just the way of the world. Where the money is where all the attention goes.
If you can sell some Chryslers or some Puntos, basically badged as Chryslers in the U.S., and get more volume, then you can make that program more profitable. That's the theory, anyways.
Hey, why don't we take a quick commercial break here? And I know we've got some questions coming in from the audience, and we can get to those. So, Ben, let's give a shout out to our friends at Bridgestone.
So this performance football is another way Bridgestone is bringing its tire technologies to the world of sports.
That's right. The same polymer technologies that allow you to take sharp turns with maximum precision on our Potenza tires is being put to use here. Troy Aikman and Deion Sanders are helping us test it out. Troy seems to like the control.
That ain't right, man.
Deion,
that ain't right.
Not so much.
Giddy up now, Deion.
At Bridgestone, our passion for performance knows no bounds.
Okay, time for rapid fire. We'll jump right into that. Ben, let it go. Okay, DJ for Money says, Daimler-Benz owns 20% of Chrysler still? How much does Fiat own? Benz is out of Chrysler, right? Completely, lock, stock, and barrel.
Yeah.
And what, Fiat owns
57%?
No,
63.
63, I believe is right.
Okay. Anyway, London, England says, I think Tesla ought to include small, say 500cc range extender to keep you going on the rare occasion that you would need it. 40 to 50 bhp would get you home fine. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure a 500cc range extender is going to do the job. I mean, look at the Volt.
What's the range now? Isn't it over 200 miles for the Model S?
For the top-end model, you're right. It's over 200 miles.
With the big battery and highest price point.
Yeah, 110,000-ish.
So that's the question. Is that enough? Do you need more beyond that? Do you need a range extender?
Well, my argument is look at the Chevy Volt, which is the best-selling range extender out there. It has what's that? A 2. Or is it a 1.6 liter engine? What?
Or is it
God, I'm blanking out on it.
2.2, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think 500cc is enough. You got to crank out a lot of juice.
Well, it's a heavy car. I mean, let's not lose sight of that.
Yeah.
The right question is a range extender right for the Tesla brand? It's the electric car company.
Correct.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
Maybe you tow one of those.
What do you think?
Tow one of those behind you.
Well, it's not the Tesla brand.
Yeah, that's
I agree with you. It's just like, the green intelligentsia would be committing mass suicide on the 405.
But what if it was fueled with goodness?
Well, yeah.
Smug, as they did in South Park. Okay, we got an answer to one of our questions. Rum and Coke says, yes, Ballard exists. The stock is worth practically zilch. I ought to know. Sounds like a Ballard shareholder.
Traded on the Vancouver Exchange for the penny stocks.
He also wants to know, does Fiat make money on its commercial vehicles? They got to.
Do.
They got to. Iveco? Right.
I'm sure they do. I don't have the numbers in front.
Gary will know the answer to this. What does Iveco stand for?
I don't know the answer.
Oh, you don't? I thought, gosh, Gary.
Let you down. I'm sorry.
Yeah. International Vehicle Company.
Really?
Yeah. That's what Iveco stands for.
Clever.
Well, Fiat.
Oh, no, not international. Industrial Vehicle Company.
Fiat is.
Excuse me.
What is it? Finmeccanica.
Auto.
No, it's Fabbrica Italiana Automobili Torino, which means car company in Torino.
Yeah, that's right.
What do we else have here? VRM Chris wants to know, are there real moves right now to build the infrastructure so that EVs are a viable alternative for transportation beyond the early adopters?
Well, John, we just heard this week at Smyrna about the build out of the infrastructure and the interest that Nissan has in that happening, and
they're playing a role in it.
They're playing a role in it, and General Motors is playing a role in it. And I think as Ford, begins to roll out its electric vehicle, it will begin to start investing more in it. And it's sort of interesting if you think about it. When the auto industry started, there weren't gas stations in every corner, right? So the people who bought a car, where the hell are they going to get gas?
Some of them were farmers, right? And they had little pumps for their tractors.
Right, but I mean, so it's the sort of thing that if Henry Ford had said, "Man, we don't have this infrastructure. We can't do anything. We got to stop now. This is silly. No gas gauges, no roofs, no windshield wipers." No automatic starter. I mean, it's just like, Jesus, who wants this thing? It's a piece of crap. I buy a horse, right?
Well, in the early days, there were no gas stations. You had to go to the general store to buy gasoline, and you bought it in big glass jars. Like those old glass water jug things. That's how they sold gasoline in the old days.
It was also used for patent medicine and.
What? You're laughing. You don't like the taste of gasoline?
They just put some red dye in it, and they say, "Oh, take that. You got a cough?"
Yeah.
People used to wash their hands with it.
Yeah. Cleaned them up real good.
It's well off.
Okay, Brian Little from Marion, Iowa says, instead of treating NASCAR trucks as a junior race series, What about switching to diesel engines? How about allowing opposed piston engines? He says, I know there'd be a lot of complaints about cost, but it might bring some excitement to the truck series.
The truck series is barely hanging on. The manufacturers have pretty much walked away from it, except for a few instances. So I don't know what's going to happen for the truck series. I think it's like I said, barely hanging on. If Craftsman bailed, they'd probably pull the plug on it.
The car series is more exciting this year, I think, with those new cars. Do you agree?
Yes, the cars definitely look better on the track.
Although now everyone's cheating. They're either cheating or getting in fistfights.
It's getting back to good old NASCAR.
Yeah.
Come on. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. It's interesting because the GM boys used these rear ends last year that actually shifted in the corners. And the only reason they knew that is because I think it was Brad Keselowski was going down into turn 1 at Indy last August and following Jimmy Johnson. And he said, I swear his rear end shifted. And then all of a sudden it was just like, well, the garage area, it's tradition in NASCAR. Everyone, if you weren't cheating somehow, you weren't winning. There's always something. I mean, it's like there's a rule book there, and it's just kind of a suggestion, in the old days.
Right.
Now it's not like that. So GM came up with this trick rear end, and Ford discovered it. So anyway, there was some bad feelings because Ford did their version of it. Actually, Penske did it.
Nailed for it.
Well, yeah, Penske did it, and then, but I wonder how they justified the difference between when Chevy did it and Ford basically did an improved version of it this year. So, I don't know. Yeah, the new cars are better. The Series 2 still has too many races.
Yep.
And
they're too long.
And they're too long, I still think the NASCAR brain trust sorely lacks vision, and they will only change under duress. They will not touch their schedule. They will not touch the race distances. It's just, I just don't get it. I really don't.
You're right. It's not until things start to collapse will they change.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we got out of the car of tomorrow, right? People stopped coming to the races, TV ratings went down, and they finally decided, well, we better change something.
Well, they deemed it that it was their decision, but the reality was Ford and GM got them in headlocks and said, you will change these cars because we're going to pull our money out. And after about the fourth time they heard that, they looked at each other and said, boy, these boys are serious. So then, this in the media tour in January before the season started, it was all NASCAR's idea. Yeah, we did these cars, and it's just like, come on, boys. You were threatened within an inch of your budgets to change. So They made it happen.
Hey, we've got a phone call coming in here, too. Ben, let's bring it in.
This is Jeff W. from Albany, New York. I would like to hear David Welch's opinion on Sergio's European turnaround strategy and his thoughts on his chances for success. The volume increases he's looking for from Alfa and Maserati are kind of nuts in my opinion. I'm kind of wondering why the mainstream media doesn't seem to be calling him out more on it. Thanks. Bye.
He's kind of known for big projections, right? He had some big ones when he first came into Chrysler.
Well, according to him, by this time next year, we're going to be swimming in Alphas. It's my favorite one.
He's going to have a tough time with Alfa here just because the luxury market's doing pretty well, but there's a lot of competition out there and everybody's ramping up, particularly in that kind of $25,000 to $40,000 range, let's call it. So I think he's going to have a tough time with that. He's got union issues in Italy. There's serious political problems there. I think he would base the company in the U.S. if he could, but he's got basically with Chrysler being the kind of master of the whole thing, but he's got such political problems in Italy with doing something like that. If he wants to list this thing on the New York Stock Exchange, which has been reported this week, it's a symbolic thing. He could still have his headquarters in Torino, but it's going to be a politically tough issue for him. So what I think of his turnaround plan, Look, he's just wedded to the same bad economy and market, particularly in Italy. If you're a German car company, you look at Opel. Opel's heavily reliant on Germany and the UK. Those economies are much better than Southern Europe. Italy's a disaster right now, and the government is just dysfunctional. So he's got all these issues that are just going to weigh down car sales.
Yeah, the scary number for me was to see how much sales in Germany dropped last month.
I think the UK is the only
one that's
market.
up, and they're barely up, but they are up.
And even Volkswagen's profit.
Right.
Took a
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, Germany's not great. It's just
right.
It's a stronger financially and economically speaking country than the rest of mainland Europe, but it's still very troubled because it's stuck in the EU.
Right. But the German people have money to buy German cars, whereas many of the Italian people don't have money to buy Fiats.
Sure, and there's no credit down there either. I mean, not no credit, but they've got financial issues. It's a mess.
Well, it might really still derail Sergio's grand plan, unless he just basically lets the Italian market settle to the low level and just concentrates on Chrysler and Jeep.
It's going to take Europe a very long time to get out of this mess.
I agree, and it hasn't hit bottom yet. That's the part that really scares me, concerns me. It doesn't scare me, but it concerns me.
They just don't have that many levers left to pull financially to keep everything afloat.
Right. But to your point, even if they hit bottom this year, it's going to take them a whole lot longer to crawl back than it took, say, over here.
The thing a lot of people in Europe don't want to hear is, look at Ireland. It was a total mess of an economy after the crash. They took some serious austerity measures that everybody hated. Now they're creating jobs again. People who left Ireland are coming back because there's work. Sometimes you got to bite that bullet.
The medicine may be bitter, but it's medicine. Mm-hmm. It'll make you better. I'm like Nietzsche. If it does not kill you, it will make you stronger. AM2 wants to know, Ford's new Escort concept was designed for the Chinese market, according to Autoexpress. New Ford UK chairman and MD, managing director Mark Ovenden, confirmed that the new model was not intended as a China-only car. Yeah, what do you guys make of that? This new supposedly low-cost car from Ford, this Escort revival of the name Escort.
It was designed for
China.
And it's designed to be a middle-tier car, not
a super low-cost one?
No, so basically, the Ford people tell me that, you have the upper-end luxury cars, you have these cars in the middle, then you have these very low, inexpensive cars. And it was designed to slot in the middle there.
So, and what kind of price range would that be, would you say?
Gosh, he told me.
It's not $5 grand.
No.
10 grand? 14?
I think it was higher. It was below 20, but above 10.
Because my speculation was, is this Ford's answer to the Volkswagen Up? And the Up is about a 10,000 euro car, right? Something like that.
But I think it's bigger than the Up, because the Up is a comparatively small car.
Mm-hmm.
How small is it?
It's a B-class car.
Yeah.
B, okay.
But I think the Up is more A.
Is it more A?
I think it is.
Okay. Maybe somebody in the chat room can.
No, it is.
Get up.
It is A. Up.
Well, let's see. What else do we have here? Mitch W. wants to know, how much of the $5 billion GM is going to spend on Opel will be used to reduce the number of workers in factories? As many as they can get away with.
Yeah.
Well, they just introduced that, or they announced that R&D center that they're building in Rüsselsheim today. So they're obviously putting more skin in that game. I think they have
sort of doesn't make sense to me either. I was thinking that maybe the tie-up with Pujo, they could be over a very long term, like exit from that and focus on Chevy. But if they're going to invest more in Opel, they can try to make a go of it. Boy, they had a chance to get out. Would have been the thing to do, too.
It would have been the thing to do because, Germany, England, Belgium, Spain were ready to put, I want to say, 6 billion euros into restructuring Opel before GM said, nah, we'll keep it.
The real problem, and this is a problem with that alliance with PSA too, is that they talk about making cars together in the same plant. Someone's ox has to get gored, right? And it's either going to be French workers laid off by a German manager or vice versa, and maybe not directly but indirectly, and that's when
wars begin.
Big problems. Yeah, I joked with Jim Hall that they could they could close a plant in Germany, a plant in France, and make one big one that straddles. Like maybe right next to the Maginot, straddles the Maginot line, or the road to the paint shop goes over a bridge over the Rhine or something like that. That way, it's perfectly shared.
We got another phone call here. Let's bring that in, Ben.
Hi, John. You guys have a great show. This is Frank from Long Island. I was wondering, what do you guys think about the opposed engines and Subaru, which has an opposed engine now, looking at that company to see if they could use that engine? There are two choices now. So I'd like to get your opinion. And I'd like to just say to David, I hope the little ones are doing fine. Bye-bye.
There's only one little one. She's doing well. New York is, I'll go on a brief rant here. New York's a tough place to move to. And I think our audience and you guys will appreciate this. So for 13 years, I covered the auto industry in this town, and 12 of them for New York editors. And they'd always ask me, so what do you drive? Oh, I drive a Cooper S. Oh, what's that? You explain it to them. They say, I haven't owned a car since 1985. We have public transit, the subway, and it's clean, it's efficient. Everybody congregates. It's so wonderful because we on the East Coast have it all figured out. No, you don't. I take this thing every day. The train from Jersey to the subway in New York, it smells, it's dirty, it's loud. It runs on a knife edge of complete delays and calamity every day. So, and look, it's not just driving to work compared to the New York City subway. There's a guy in my office who worked in Shanghai and said their subway and train system is better than the one in New York. So 13 years of this sort of, looking up the nostrils of my New York editors who, view driving to work as 10 years up the evolutionary trail from the buggy whip. They don't have anything figured out. It's every time I walk down the subway, there's a waft of stale urine hits me in the face. It's it's not fun or pretty or efficient or clean. It's calamity.
Thanks for that rant. But getting back to the call in question, Subaru does not have an opposed piston engine.
No, they have a boxer.
They have a boxer engine. So, the conrods are sort of boxing at each other, but there's not two pistons per cylinder, which is what the Eco Motors and the Acades motor has. So, would Subaru go that way? I doubt it. I think the opposed piston engines are brilliant. I think they're really cool. But will the auto industry adopt them? Highly unlikely.
Maybe trucks, heavy trucks.
Why hasn't Eco Motors got any traction? I mean,
they got traction.
They just signed a deal with a Chinese company.
There go again.
This is just the not invented here.
Because I still go back to when we had Peter Hofbauer here, the guy who designed the engine.
And we've had Runkle on, too.
And we've had Runkle on. And I asked Peter, okay, let's pretend you're back at Volkswagen and somebody brings this brilliant opposed piston design to you. Would you put it in production? And he said, no. And I said, why not? Knowing the answer. And he said, because we have billions invested in today's engines, and we can't walk away from that investment.
But I think Dave Johnson made an interesting point last week when he was talking about the fact that you can basically reutilize the tooling, which is the biggest part of any engine program. Right? I mean, buying the capital equipment to put in the factories to make this stuff. And if you're fundamentally able to use most of that, then, what's the risk?
Well, I mean, David Johnson from Acades Motor with their opposed piston, he's basically right. in that, boring machines and CNC and that sort of stuff. But the castings are completely different. The molds for the castings are completely different. The pallets would have to be redesigned. Okay, maybe I'm talking to Mr. Automotive Design and Production here, so I will defer to what you're saying, Gary. I buy your skepticism. But I'm not sure it's as easy as David made it out to be. I'm not sure.
Oh, I don't think it's easy, but
it's doable.
It's doable, but I think intellectually or culturally that it would be a problem to do that, right? Because you just don't want to say, oh, I'm going to be the guy who pulls the trigger on this. We're going to have an engine program that does this. But man, if these guys, if they're able to do what they can, what they say they can do, I mean, isn't it abrogation of responsibility not to do something like that?
No, I would agree, and that's a great way to put it, is are you really doing your fiduciary duty as a manager of a company, ignoring something that could be half the cost? Yeah, I agree with you on that. But, you look at the history of the auto industry, there's been essentially 3 engines: gasoline piston, compression ignition, i.e. diesel, and rotary. And the rotary's gone nowhere. So in 120 years, what?
It was a lot of fun.
Oh,
the RX-7.
No. Hey, right. But it's just never gotten beyond Mazda and NSU if you go back earlier. But the point is in over 120 years, we've had 2 engines.
We're overdue.
I agree with the way you think. I don't see the industry adopting it anytime soon. I don't. I think there's...
And if they use natural gas, my God, it'd be like Nirvana.
That would be a killer combination. It really would. And I keep arguing in favor of propane over natural gas just because it's a whole lot cheaper to do a car on propane.
But isn't it dirtier, you were saying?
No, it's not dirtier. They're roughly the same. The difference is that natural gas has to be stored at 3,600 psi. That's a lot of pressure. Propane you can store at 250 psi. So the tanks are not nearly as expensive and so on down the line.
And you can go to the hardware store and get a fill-up.
You can, although they'll gouge you.
Well,
you don't get any savings buying at that through your local propane. Fill it up for the grill to have a barbecue supplier. That's
Fire up a Weber.
Or go to the RV parks. Then it's really expensive. You want to, find a mass distributor and cut a 5-year contract and get industrial prices. Now you're talking. Now the saving. If you buy enough propane or natural gas for that, you can get it for under $1 a gallon.
You must be a Winnebago owner or something.
No, I've dived into this topic big time because I think the commercial truck market in this country is ripe for conversion. They talk pennies per mile, and you can save. Well, right now today, the 2 stories I like to tell is an airport shuttle van, that takes you from the parking lot to the terminal. Typical van can save $30,000 a year converting to propane. A Class 8 semi over-the-road truck can save $150,000 over the 6 years typically owned by them. Now, that's at today's prices. Natural gas prices are going up. Propane will go up with it. But the savings are still astonishing.
But the Class 8 truck doing the long haul, this person has to stop more often to fill up, which means that he's going to be spending more at Stuckey's.
Because
that's going to profit margins going straight.
It's not stored as gas. It's stored as liquid. And so you get a lot more energy density. And because they're big Class 8 semi, you just put in a bigger tank. So even though you're burning more gallons, the gallons are at half the price of diesel. And that's the single biggest cost, variable cost for these truck companies, is their fuel. That's why even now the train companies are looking at converting locomotives to run on natural gas because the fuel savings are.
So can you ignite natural gas or propane with compression ignition?
I gotta believe you can, and I'm still learning on a lot of this stuff. But
you can ignite it with those little spark things.
That you can, right.
If you don't have a spark, which you don't in a
I know, but that's
engine,
a
then you have
low
to
temperature.
You have to end up getting all these
sparks.
But I want to say it's
like so like with diesel, can you just do it through high compression?
I want to say it's General Electric and Caterpillar that are doing the diesel locomotive, or the locomotive engines that will run on natural gas. Whether it's compression ignition, I don't know. That's a good question. I got to look into that. Anyway, good time to wrap up this show. And David Welch, been great having you here.
And great to be back.
It's cool. So let us know when you're back in town.
I will.
Gary Vasilash, always good seeing you. Peter, great seeing you as well. And another show. And we want to thank everybody who has tuned in, and please join us again next week.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone. Your journey, our passion.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern. Get your daily news fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There is all that and much more at Autoline.tv.